check. All right, cool. Welcome. So, real quick for this intro of this video today, I've just decided to set myself a little goal of concisely and quickly explaining what it is that we're doing in our gym for the people who maybe don't know anything about this methodology that we're using, the ecological approach, don't have a framework for it, don't understand it, and maybe haven't seen it before. And I also just want to do it very quickly. I'm not going to get too into it, but I will jump into it more in future videos. But if you're not familiar with what we're doing, you're about to see some wrestling rounds in which we will be playing little games. And what we focus on, so the difference in what we're doing and just maybe a traditional school is traditional schools focus on techniques, and as you learn these techniques, they should lead to a specific outcome, right? If you think of a scissor sweep, you are doing a specific movement to an opponent to sweep, put them down, and get on top, right? So the technique leads to a specific outcome. What we do differently is we focus on an outcome, and we allow ourselves to find any way to get to that outcome. And it's not dependent on what our opponent, it's not dependent on a certain movement to work. We're training ourselves to adapt to whatever our opponent is doing, whatever is happening within me and my opponent on the mats at that moment, to make an outcome happen. So we're trying to repeat an outcome, but we're not doing it a specific way. We're not doing it through using a certain technique. So what we do when we're training is we're exploring the different ways in order to create an outcome. The video you're about to watch, the rounds you're about to see, are wrestling, where our goal is to get to our opponent's hips and then put them down. Put their hips down specifically. So we're not doing a certain movement to get them down. We are just trying to get them down. The outcome that we would like to do is get them down to the ground in whatever way necessary. Okay? We're not using specific techniques. We're not doing specific grips or specific, we're not picking up single legs. We're not double legging. We're not arm dragging. We're using a bunch of movements that can look like some of those things to you, but it isn't what we're doing that's important. It's the outcome that's important, not the technique. The way we decide the outcome that we pick, like getting to the hips and putting our opponent's hips on the ground, are what we call invariants. And all that means is, in a takedown, what always has to happen for something to be considered a takedown? Well, in any situation, when you've taken someone down, their hips are attached to the floor and you are on top, right? So that always happens in a takedown, or else it's considered something else, right? Because if you take someone down, if you're trying to take someone down and they fall and you don't land on top of them and you land on the ground next to them and you both stand up, then that wasn't considered a takedown. Also, if you do like some kind of like suicide roll to try to get someone down and they land on top of you, you haven't taken them down. They've taken you down effectively. So in any time that you consider an opponent taken down is when their hips are on the ground and you are on top of them, controlling them. So since we know that happens, that is what has to happen for a takedown to have occurred. We focus on getting our opponent's hips to the ground in whatever way that looks like, because it doesn't matter how you get someone down as long as you get them down. So that is what we're doing every time we train, is we're finding the things that always have to happen in order for a positive outcome to occur. And we're training ourselves to adapt to finding as many possible solutions to that outcome as possible, and the most effective way in the moment. And that's going to be different every single time you do it, because every moment is a new moment. So that's what we're doing when we're training. I'm going to dive more into this in the future. I just wanted, as you're watching this, to know we've set up the precedent in our room to know when we come into class, we're not drilling movements. We're going live, and our goals are going to be specific to what has to occur, and you should just find ways to make that happen. And we give you tons of reps in order to find ways to make that work. And if it's not working, find other ways to do it until maybe something does work. That's kind of what we're doing most of the time. Here's the rounds. Okay, so you just saw sort of a class and some free rounds at the end. Just to finish this video off, if you notice, we were looking for that outcome of getting our opponent's hips to the ground, right? I said this before. Now, a way that we train and acquire skills in these different positions, a big way that we create movements, we create perceptions and actions. I'm trying to say this in a way that isn't like specific to the science. I'd rather say it in a way that makes sense to people and to me. We know that for instance, I know that I need to get your hips down and be on top, right? Well, there's a bunch of ways to do that, and there's a bunch of ways that I don't know how to use my body to do that, right? There's like a bunch of ways that I can't understand, or I haven't figured out yet how to do that. So one way that we find new ways of doing things are Josh, our coach, will add what he calls, or what is called constraints. And what a constraint does is it makes the game a little bit more specific, and it takes away options. So, for instance, if my goal is to not let my opponent get my hips. Sorry, if my goal is to get my opponent's hips down to the ground, right? He may. Let me say that one more time. If I am defending a takedown, so my opponent is trying to get my hips to the ground, he will start my opponent in a position where he's got his arms locked around my hips already. So he's starting us in this position that's not neutral. So I'm having to work on figuring out ways to not get taken down from that position, right? And so our goals in these today were to basically, if my opponent's attached to my hips and trying to take me down, I have to detach from him and face him. So there's a bunch of ways to do that, and we got to explore different ways of doing that by starting off in different positions and giving us different constraints. Like, I can't have my hips ever touch the ground. That could be a constraint. Or I'm not allowed to lock my hands in this position. That's a constraint because it makes you figure out other ways of doing and of getting to an outcome. And so we explore these invariant positions, we explore these things that we already understand have to happen, and we find different ways of making that more difficult or more focused. And that's basically how we acquire skill in our class. There's many different ways to constrain. I'm not going to get into all of that. I will in the future, so that it's more clear on like what we're doing and why it's working. But I don't know. If you have any thoughts on that, leave it in the comments. I'm sure Josh will find something that I said and be like, that's kind of wrong, which it happens because this is it requires a lot of thought and studying, and Josh has done the most out of anybody in our gym, probably most people in the country. And so he has a better understanding of it. I'm just a student, so it's not really important that I know all this stuff. I do have interest in learning it, so I do know a bit about it, but it's all through like asking Josh, hey, what is this? Why are we doing this? What is this? What if I do this? What happens if this happens? And he has, he's in the role of, helping, pointing me toward the right direction or towards a direction that's going to help build skill. So yeah, that's what we're doing. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.